Moving on with the American reaction to World War I. By 1916, the war is 2 years old, and it's an election year for the United States. The Democrats are going to nominate Woodrow Wilson for a second term. He had a pretty good first term. Uh, did quite a few things that he had promised, and was a pretty sound president as far as keeping his promises. The Republicans nominated Charles Evans Hughes. That's him. He's a former judge. Wilson's campaign slogan was, "He kept us out of war," of course, referring to World War I. Wilson won the Electoral College 277 to 254 and wins the popular vote by about 600,000. There's the map. You can see, of course, the South still voting Democrat, solid South, but they carry the West. Wilson carries the West, although not the Northeast, where uh, Hughes carries Pennsylvania and New York, which you'll notice are the two most populous states of the time period. So, how does the U.S. get into World War I? Well, in 1916, just about 10 months before the election, on March 24th, Germany sinks a French passenger ship, the Sussex. That's a picture of it there. Much smaller than the Lusitania, but still a passenger ship. This time, the U.S. is very upset and threatened to go to war. And so it takes a couple of months, but finally on May 4th, 1916, Germany issues the Sussex Pledge. And basically, trying to appease the U.S. and keep them out of the war, Germany promises that U boats would warn ships before attacking. In other words, the U boats would surface, let the ships know they were there, give them a chance to abandon ship, and then sink them. That only goes on for about 7 months. In February of 1917, Germany breaks the pledge and goes back to unrestricted submarine warfare. The British took advantage of the pledge and armed their passenger ships so when the U boats popped up, they would attack them. So it wasn't working for the Germans. Germany also, by this time, but Russia is not doing well. And so Germany feels like they can win the war even if the U.S. were to get involved at this point. So, as a result of breaking the Sussex Pledge, on February 3rd, U.S. reaction is to break off diplomatic relations with Germany, meaning that basically we took back our ambassador and we kicked their ambassador out of our country. And there's a newspaper from the time period talking about the breaking of relations. Another cause for the U.S. entry is the Zimmerman Note. Great Britain intercepted a message from Germany to Mexico. And in that letter or note, Germany was offering Mexico an alliance. If Mexico would attack the United States to keep the U.S. out of the war in Europe, when Germany won the war in Europe, they would come over and help Mexico defeat the United States. And there's a newspaper article about the German plot against the U.S. Germany would assist Mexico after the war, like I had said. And the big thing is Mexico would receive the territory it lost in the Mexican-American War, which was about 70 years prior to this. Uh, that would be what is today California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and Texas. And there's a map just showing them what the Germans were promising to help Mexico get back. So the war resolution. President Wilson is going to go to Congress and he asks for a declaration of war on Germany. There's President Wilson, a picture of him giving the speech to Congress asking for the declaration. The Senate passed it 82 to 6, and it passes in the House of Representatives 373 to 50. It goes to President Wilson, and he signs the declaration on April the 6th, 1917, and the U.S. is officially at war. Looking at the military for the U.S., though, we weren't exactly ready for war. At that point, the U.S. military had 120,000 men in it. That would be all the branches. The German army had around 4 million men. So President Wilson appoints General Pershing to command what is known as the AEF, the American Expeditionary Force, and he gives him an army of 14,500, not much against an army of 4 million, but he sends them to Europe to show the Allies that we are intent on coming to the war. That's General Pershing. May 1917, shortly after passing the War Declaration, Congress passes the Selective Service Act. That's a draft. And there's a notice that was sent out that all men between the ages of 21 and 30 had to register for the draft. By November of 1918, that's when the war ends, 24 million men registered for the draft. Out of that 24 million, 3 million were actually drafted. About 2 million made it over to actually serve during the war. The biggest thing for the U.S. was the Battle of the Atlantic to start. April of 1917, German U-boats sank over 400 ships, and we have to get our military and supplies over there on those ships. Right? Hard to do when they're being sunk. So starting in May of 1917, the Allies organized ships into convoys. Now that you have the U.S. and British navies working together, you have more ships to guard the troops and supplies headed over. And there's just a way they're set up. You can kind of see you put the merchant ships in the middle, you have a big ship out in the front, and you put some of your fast destroyers on the sides, and you're looking for the U-boats. December 1917, ship losses were down to about 200 a month, so it was working. And there's a picture of a convoy. You can see the ships. You even have an aircraft flying over looking for U-boats.